Chapter 24. Stone Tomb. I saw Yi Sin, with half of her body sunk into the sand, struggling frantically. Shirley Yang gripped her arms tightly, trying to pull her out. Amidst the confusion, someone yelled out, "Quicksand!" We rushed to Yi Sin's location, following the tracks in the sand, ready to pull her out without hesitation. Some, who didn't have time to find a rope, hastily unbuckled their leather belts, trying to loop them around her arms. Surprisingly, it didn't take much force to pull Yi Sin from the sand. It didn't seem like quicksand, a substance known for its rapid sinking and strong suction. If it had been, Shirley Yang's strength wouldn't have sufficed to hold Yi Sin, who would have continued to sink, stopped only by something solid underground. Otherwise, the delay of 10 or so seconds before our arrival would have been too late for a rescue from actual quicksand. Collecting herself and wiping away tears, Yi Sin said, "I must have stepped on a stone slab below the sand that gave way because there was a hollow underneath." Curious, Shirley Yang suggested, "Could it be those stone tombs? Let's take a look." We quickly dug at the spot where Yi Sin had fallen through, and soon after, just below a thin layer of sand matching the dune slope, an inclined stone wall with a recent blast hole appeared. Seemingly bombed only a few days before, wind-blown sand had thinly veiled the breach. Yi Sin's misstep onto the edge of the rubble had caused her fall. Everyone stared at the stone cavern we had just uncovered, exchanging looks of surprise and confusion. It was unmistakably a tomb carved from stone, raising the question of whether it had already been plundered. Examining the broken rocks at the entrance and the direction of the blast, I noted that it was a precise minor directional explosion. With my years of experience as a sapper, familiar with various types of explosives almost as well as the hair on my head, such a level of expertise would be needed to carry out this type of blast on a stone tomb like this. The explosion was designed to understand the rock's resistance, to collapse the stone wall without interior damage. Surely not the work of civilian-grade explosives. Years distanced from the army, I wondered how even active servicemen could be involved in such deeds, yet that seemed improbable. Perhaps it was the work of stolen explosives. But within this vast, boundless desert, how did the looters locate these ancient tombs? With the terrain so uniform, it was a mystery if anyone besides me, with my middling knowledge of feng shui and astrology, possessed the skills to find such places. As we cleared away more sand, we revealed a mallet-shaped stone wall, with the side blasted open and the rest submerged beneath the dunes. This was a typical Wei and Jin dynasty stone tomb, constructed from large, thick stones shaped into an arch with seams sealed by fish glue. Such stone tombs were common near the relics of Shiyi City. An early 19th century European explorer once described them. Stone tombs are scattered across the desert. They vary in size, too many to count. Most are buried under the sand, showing only their black pointed tops, resembling miniaturized Egyptian pyramids. Wandering among this forest of stone tombs scattered across the desert is nothing short of breathtaking. These tombs have now been thoroughly covered by the desert, making them difficult to find. Professor Chin speculated that a recent severe sandstorm might have exposed part of this tomb, a stroke of ill fortune that the tomb raiders had exploited more promptly than the archaeological team who arrived a step too late. The ancient tombs and relics in Xinjiang experienced the most extensive looting before World War II, particularly in the early 19th century. The archaeological treasures of areas such as the eastern part of the Taklamakan Desert around Lulan and the southern edges near Naya were virtually emptied by looters. Now, tomb robbers are turning their attention to the southwestern Black Desert, an area with harsh natural conditions where human presence is scarce, making it an ideal haven for these criminals. Along our journey, we have encountered several desecrated ancient tombs, which explains Professor Chin's urgency to enter the desert. If tomb raiding activities in this region are not stopped soon, there might be nothing left in the near future. On entering one of the vandalized tombs, we found the inside pitch black. Professor Chin and Halai Guo and I investigated with our flashlights. The chamber was about the size of a small bungalow, scattered with 4 or 5 wooden coffins, all of which had been forcefully opened and discarded haphazardly. Among the coffins, varying in size, it was evident that this was a communal burial site. The only remaining mummy was that of a young woman with long, braided hair. Her head was relatively well preserved, while the rest of her body had been destroyed, and the rest of the remains were likely stolen by tomb raiders. In Xinjiang's desert tombs, mummies are as valuable as treasures themselves. I've heard Professor Chen explain there are different types of mummies. Wet mummies that retain moisture like the woman from Mowangdui, wax specimens that went through a special preservation process, frozen mummies found in ever-frozen glacial regions, tan mummies similar to zombies, and others such as artificially preserved mummies akin to the Egyptian pharaohs. The mummies of Xinjiang, however, naturally formed in a high-temperature, dry, sterile environment, making them exceedingly valuable, especially the older ones. Museums, exhibition halls, and collectors around the world often compete to acquire them at high prices. Discovering the remaining mummies in the stone tomb had been stolen and the site badly damaged, Professor Chun could only sigh in dismay. He instructed a few students to try and salvage what was left, hoping to rescue any remaining artifacts. I was concerned that Professor Chen's excitement might overwhelm his body, so I suggested he rest early. After he gave a few instructions to Hal Igua, instructing him to carefully document the stone tomb's condition, Fatty accompanied him back to the camp to rest. The next day, the wind continued, blowing steadily but not fiercely. When the archaeological team was preparing to depart, Professor Chun came to me and mentioned his concerns about the recently robbed stone tomb we had encountered the night before. He believed that a band of tomb raiders might have entered the depths of the Black Desert before us and insisted that we shouldn't delay and instead should try to catch up with them. I responded noncommittally, secretly hoping we wouldn't cross paths with the robbers. Allies in such a place could quickly become enemies. The looters who had plundered the stone tomb possessed military-grade explosives and possibly other formidable equipment. A confrontation would likely lead to violence, which I wanted to avoid, especially since any injury among the scholarly archaeologists would carry a heavy burden of responsibility. However, considering the vast expanse of the desert, the chances of crossing paths with another group were slim. If it weren't for our decision to camp near the highest dune in the area, which inadvertently led us to the tomb, we probably wouldn't have stumbled upon it. Perhaps the robbers had already taken what they wanted and left. Over the following days, our team ventured deeper into the Black Desert and eventually lost track of the Zidu River, named after the Gudi language word for shadow, because the river was elusive, like a shadow. Anlaman became increasingly frustrated until he finally admitted defeat, suggesting it was as far as Allah would allow us to go. With everyone exhausted and the camels tired, the still desert sky meant the scorching sun lasted for what seemed an eternity each day. To conserve drinking water, we dug holes in the sand during the day, erecting waterproof canvas overhead to provide shade and cooler air from the ground, preserving our body's moisture. We only moved during the evening and morning, alternating between riding camels and walking. Moving forward was no longer sustainable with the dwindling supply of food and water, and I contemplated that if we didn't turn back within a day or two, we may have to slaughter the camels for sustenance. Observing how weary and desiccated everyone was, they were clearly at their limit. As the sun's heat grew unbearable, I instructed everyone to dig in for rest. After ensuring everyone was settled, Shirley Yang and Anlaman approached me to discuss our course of action. Shirley conveyed, "Captain Hu, Mr. Anlaman, my exploration notes describe an account from the English explorer who lost trace of the Zidu River here in the lifeless sea of death. Amidst the barren sands, two massive black magnetic mountains faced each other in the twilight's glow, standing like two silent, black-armored ancient warriors guarding an ancient secret. Through a valley gate-like corridor, a mythical city appeared before your eyes.